They made their way carefully down a hallway. There were guard stations placed at intervals along the way, but the guards were lax. Spock and Selita had no trouble sneaking up on them and dispatching them from behind. Selita unloaded a disruptor from the belt of one of the guards and extended it to Spock. "Why are you here? The Federation doesn't have diplomatic ties with Thallon. No one does." "As of late, I have been making inroads into such situations as these precisely because there are no diplomatic ties. Absence of presence does not require absence of interest. So, how do we get off of Thallon?" "I have arranged transportation." As they got farther and farther away from the dungeon, Selita was struck once more by the opulence of their surroundings. The royal family of Thallon was collectively every inch the image of the ruling upper class. And then from around the corner stepped Sequan. Spock and Selita stopped dead in their tracks. Sequan did likewise. A disruptor was dangling from his hip. Selita did not wait for him to draw it. "Do not move or I will shoot." Sequan seemed amused. "Are you serious?" Selita squeezed the trigger. Nothing happened. As if reading her mind, Sequan told her, "Genetically encoded to its user, just in case a situation such as this should present itself." Of course, Sequan's weapon would work just fine. He had them cold. They knew it. He knew it. Spock informed Sequan, "There is nothing to be gained by our continued incarceration." "Indeed, I doubt the Chancellor would feel the same way." Before Spock could reply, Selita drew herself up to her full height. "I want you to know that I believe your so-called civilized society to be anything but. Your xenophobia and controlling impulses are ultimately self-destructive. I believe that your society will crumble within the next 20 years. Sequan eyed her with an unrestrained curiosity. Then he pointed off to his left. "Go. The way is clear, I believe. Depart." Selita couldn't help herself. "Why are you helping us?" Sequan smiled. "Typical scientist. You can take nothing for granted. Well, I'll tell you. It will annoy the Chancellor. There, now go, before I change my mind." It was not a turn of events that either Spock or Selita was in the slightest way inclined to challenge. They moved at a miles-eating clip until the palace was safely distant, and then Spock slowed his gait a notch. "I have made arrangements, a private vessel, primarily a freighter servicing the Thelonian Empire. The freighter captain will meet us shortly and escort us from the planet's surface." She turned to face him. "Ambassador Spock, thank you." "You are..." He paused, dredged up the word. "Welcome." Yet another 10 years passed. The USS Enterprise, 1701E, made her way through space at considerably less than her normal brisk clip. The Enterprise was surrounded by half a dozen far smaller, less speedy ships. Commander William Riker was looking with slight amusement at the monitor screen.
"I feel like a mother duck."
Data returned at his station and regarded Riker with such clear befuddlement that it was all Picard could do to keep a straight face.
"Don't say it, Data. Don't begin inquiring as to whether Mr. Riker will begin quacking or waddling or laying eggs or acquiring webbing between his toes. The answer is no."
Data nodded.
"Very well, sir. In any event, it will not be necessary since you have already voiced all the possibilities that occurred to me."
Seated on either side of Picard, Riker and Counselor Deanna Troi exchanged broad grins. At the Khan, Lieutenant Christian Eyre glanced over his shoulder at Picard.
"Sir, we are within range of Deep Space 5. There's a ton of ion activity in the area. 30, maybe 40 ships have passed through here within the last 24 hours.
Riker glanced at Picard.
More refugees? Without question, number one. Matters should be fairly interesting upon our arrival.
Picard had never seen a space station quite so packed. Deep Space 5 was bristling with ships docked at every port.
Incoming signal, sir.
The screen rippled and the image of DS-5 disappeared to be replaced by a face that Picard had not been expecting. The stony, perpetually disapproving gaze of Admiral Edward Jellicoe. Jellicoe had a reputation for efficiency and for getting the job done, but he and Picard differed on a very core, fundamental issue. Men followed Jellicoe because, by the chain of command, they had to. They followed Picard because they wanted to. Jellicoe wasted no time.
Captain Picard, where the hell have you been?
Picard was unflappable.
We could have been here far more quickly, Admiral. However, that would have required abandoning the vessels that we are requested to escort.
Jellicoe gestured impatiently.
Fine, whatever. Ready the main meeting room and prepare to beam us over.
Picard entered the guest quarters. The room was mostly dark with illumination from a lit mirror and a candle. To one side of the room, a man was seated in a most contemplative manner.
Ambassador Spock, we have arrived. Will you require anything before the meeting? No, Captain.
No one had been more surprised than Picard when he had rendezvoused with the transport that had brought Spock to the Enterprise. Spock had been on assignment on Romulus. It was a measure of how seriously the Federation took the fall of the Thallonian Empire that they had requested Spock attend the Thallonian summit. Spock was one of the only people Picard knew of who had any familiarity at all with the Thallonians. For a while, Spock gazed at Picard, then finally spoke.
Captain, I find that I am experiencing a degree of anticipation in working with you again. The human term would be that I am looking forward to it.
He paused, contemplating the thought.
Fascinating. The galaxy is infinitely fascinating, Ambassador. So it would appear, Captain.
Then Picard walked out the door, leaving the ambassador alone in his darkness. Riker felt the tension when he walked into the main conference lounge. Picard was already there, talking with Ambassador Spock and with a woman whom Riker immediately recognized as Vice Admiral Aliana Nekayev. Nekayev, by her rapt attention on the Vulcan, was clearly a major admirer of Spock. Then Riker noticed something out of the corner of his eye. A Thallonian standing over to one side in the conference room. He was tall and mustached, with spiral tattoos on his head. Riker cleared his throat and approached the Thallonian.
Commander William T. Riker, First Officer of the Enterprise.
The Thallonian inclined his head slightly.
Siquan, former prince of the Thallonian Empire.
Then Riker saw Admiral Jellicoe enter the conference room with a squat and bulky young Dantarian named Rajan. The Dantarian appeared insufferably smug as he studied Siquan, not even bothering to glance at Riker. Riker was not surprised by the presence of a representative from Dantary. The Dantary were the Thallonians' neighbors over in Sector 221-H, a nearby rival empire who were as iron-fisted in their way as the Thallonians had been in theirs. Jellicoe gave a brisk greeting, introduced everyone, suggested they get down to business. Siquan began.
I will be blunt. Our empire has fallen apart. Our economy has crumbled. Our social organization lies in ruins, and I have every reason to believe that the Dantari have a hand in it.
Siquan stabbed a finger at the Dantarian Rajan.
Do you deny it?
Rajan shot back heatedly.
I completely, totally, and absolutely deny it. Of course you do. I would have expected nothing less from a liar such as yourself.
With a snarl of anger, Rajan launched himself at Siquan. Picard thundered.
That's enough!
They pulled Rajan off Siquan as Admiral Nekayev stepped up to Siquan.
That was completely uncalled for, Lord Kwan. You do not have to be present at this meeting. Deposed leaders do not rank particularly high in the grand scheme of things.
As Rajan pulled himself together, Sequan studied them all as if they were insects. Then Spock spoke.
It would be logical for the Danteri to pursue a course of gradually undercutting the structure of the Thalonian ruling class. Such actions would obtain the same goals as outright conquest without the proportionate risk. Of course, one could just as easily speculate that the Thalonian Empire collapsed entirely on its own through a combination of mismanagement and oppression.
Nekayev turned to Jellicoe.
Admiral Jellicoe, it's your show. Walk us through.
Jellicoe surveyed those gathered around the table.
The Thalonian Empire has effectively collapsed. The royal family has been, for the most part, executed. Various races, indeed entire worlds whose antipathies had been held in check by Thalonian rule, are beginning to lapse into old and bitter disputes.
Spock now spoke.
Lord Quan, as you well know, I have been in Thalonian territory. The Thalonian desire for secrecy bordered on the xenophobic. It would be most helpful to these proceedings if you provided us with a more clear picture of what the Thalonian Empire consisted of. The number of systems, the more prominent races. Such information would serve to guide us in our decisions.
Sequan looked slowly around the room.
There were, at last count, 37 systems within the Empire. Each system has at least one inhabited planet, some as many as 4.
Jellicoe asked,
Would you be willing to work with Starfleet cartographers to give us a more detailed picture?
Under certain conditions. I have many supporters still in place, but they are scattered and afraid. With the armed might of Starfleet behind us, however, it will rally support and prevent a return to the anarchy that once existed.
Rajan's voice turned deadly.
That would not be advisable. We Danteri have our own security to consider. In point of fact, we were intending to send our own vessels into Thalonian space.
Ambassador Spock began speaking in his slow, deliberate manner.
I believe we can all agree that avoiding violence and an exacerbation of an already difficult situation is of paramount importance. I have made a thorough study of the likely reactions of both the Danteri and the Thalonians. Thus far, they have remained in line with the projected probability curve. With that in mind, I have already made recommendations to the Federation which, if I am not mistaken, Admiral Nekayev is prepared to discuss.
Nekayev drummed her fingers on the desk for a moment, gathering her thoughts.
Rajan, since the Danteri are members of the United Federation of Planets, I am informing you that the Federation would consider it contrary to its best interests to have Danterian ships entering Thalonian space and stirring up hostilities.
Jellicoe then turned to Sequan.
Starfleet is not going to send in armed forces to restore you or any surviving members of the royal family to power, Lord Quan. It simply isn't our way.
Riker interrupted.
I suggest we assign a starship to enter Thalonian space. A single starship, hardly a fleet. That ship will both serve to report to the Federation about what we find within Thalonian space, but will also have the latitude to lend humanitarian aid where needed. The starship would basically do whatever is necessary, within reason, to try and make Sector 221-G a going concern again.
Jellicoe shook his head.
You want to send a starship into a potentially incendiary position with possible enemies all around them, any of whom might want their help one moment and then turn on them the next? The bottom line is that Sector 221-G is a powder keg, and Commander Riker has suggested that we ask someone to stick their head into the lion's mouth. It is a completely unnecessary risk.
Ambassador Spock fixed Jellicoe with a dead-eyed stare.
Risk, Admiral, is our business.
Admiral Nekayev turned in her chair to Picard.
Captain, what do you think?
He tapped his fingertips on the table thoughtfully.
I agree with Commander Riker.
Nekayev paused, then announced to them all.
I believe the idea has merit. It may take a bit of doing, but I'm reasonably certain I can sell the notion to the Federation. Admiral Jellicoe, do you have a recommendation for an available starship?
Jellicoe started to protest again, but then saw the look of steel in Nekayev's eyes. He switched mental tracks and began running through available ships in his mind.
One comes to mind, the Excalibur.
Picard looked up.
Wasn't she damaged in the recent Borg invasion?
Admiral Nekayev nodded.
Yes, and her captain killed. I would look to you, Captain Picard, and Admiral Jellicoe for recommendations as to the appropriate captain for this assignment. We'll convene in your office, Picard, in 2 hours.
Nekayev looked at Rajan and Siquan.
It is my hope that this decision will meet with your approval.
Rajan paused, then spoke.
The Dantarian government will be satisfied.
All eyes turned to Siquan.
I will, of course, be on this vessel as well.
Rajan thumped his fist on the table.
We protest.
Nekayev stepped in before the meeting could escalate in hostility.
Lord Siquan, I must respectfully reject your request. I am sorry.
Siquan rose from his chair and loomed over them.
No, you are not sorry, but you will be.
As he headed for the door, Nekayev called after him.
Is that a threat, Lord Kwan?
Without slowing, he called over his shoulder.
No, Admiral Nekayev. A prediction.
Later in Picard's office, Jellicoe made no attempt to hide his astonishment when Picard suggested that Mackenzie Calhoun command the Excalibur. Jellicoe looked to Nekayev for some sort of confirmation that he was hearing a notion that was clearly insane.
Picard, in case you haven't noticed, the man resigned. Calhoun is no longer a member of Starfleet. He hasn't been for, 5 years? There have been rumors he's dabbling in slave trade, gun running.
That's absurd. We can't be guided by rumors and innuendo. Calhoun knows that region of space. His home world, Xenex, is right up against the Thallonian frontier. Admirals, let us not delude ourselves. If the Thallonian Empire is falling apart, you're talking about planets at war with each other. You need someone who can pull worlds together. Calhoun has done that. He was doing it when he was still in his late teens. We need that strength and skill now, more than ever before.
Nekayev interrupted.
Admiral Jellicoe, may I ask whom you recommend?
The first officer of the Excalibur, Commander Elizabeth Paula Shelby. She deserves her own command.
Picard responded.
She very likely does, but the unique situation, the challenges it presents,
Calhoun is simply better suited.
Nekayev moved to end the sparring.
I'd like formal proposals on my desk back at Starfleet within 48 hours. But I need to talk with Captain Picard regarding another matter. If you wouldn't mind, Admiral Jellicoe.
Jellicoe tried to look indifferent as he shrugged and walked out. Nekayev turned to face Picard.
Captain, regarding Calhoun, he has been engaged in some extremely questionable activities. I know because I assigned them. You might say he is deep undercover.
So, he didn't leave Starfleet?
Oh, he left all right. The incident involving the Grissom which prompted his departure was entirely genuine. But I bailed him out of a situation from which he likely wouldn't have gotten out in one piece, and in return he's worked for us clandestinely. And now I'm concerned that we may be on the verge of losing him. He's been under for too long. I'm beginning to fear that we may have damaged the man's soul. He needs a purpose in life, Picard. He needs Starfleet, even if he doesn't fully accept that. A year from now, perhaps even 6 months, it might be too late. He might be dead, or worse.
Admiral, can you bring him into Starfleet headquarters? Talk with him.
I'm not entirely certain he would listen to me.
I think in this instance it might be easier for the mountain to go to Mohammed, if you catch my drift. Picard smiled.
Yes, I think I do.
In the bar on Mojave Station, an Orion slave trader named Crassus stared appraisingly at his cards in his hand, and then across the table at the insufferably smug face of the Xenexian who was his main opponent. The Xenexian wasn't giving the slightest indication of what he had in his hand. He looked at Crassus with a sort of bland disinterest, as if there weren't a fortune in latinum currently sitting in the pot. Crassus knew little about the Xenexian beyond that he apparently had some involvement in the slave trade. Crassus stroked his green chin thoughtfully. From nearby, he heard a low chuckle. Zinna was looking over his shoulder. "Stop breathing on me, Zinna." The scantily clad Orion slave girl took a step back, but she grinned in a manner that bordered on savage pleasure. Crassus had acquired Zinna the previous year and had intended her for a quick resale, but he had taken a fancy to her. The reaction of the girl had not gone unnoticed by the Xenexian. "Seems to me, Crassus, like you've got a fairly good hand judging by your girlfriend's reaction. Or perhaps the two of you are working together to make me doubt myself." He reached down into a case at his feet and pulled out 2 more bars of gold-pressed latinum and dropped them onto the table. Crassus looked at the bet and felt the blood drain slightly from his face. "I can't cover that." But his greed was overwhelming. His eyes caught Zinna and he looked back at the Xenexian. "How about her? What Zinna can provide in the way of physical gratification, she's worth 10 times that." The Xenexian regarded her thoughtfully. "If I won you, Zinna, would you try to kill me as payback, or would you show gratitude for one who would treat you far better than a man who'd put you up for a stake in a game of 6-card Warhoon?" A look of contempt crossed Zinna's face. "Clearly, I have no more reason to be loyal to Crassus than he has to be loyal to me. Do what you will, Xenexian." Crassus crowed. "We finally have a game for true men, Xenexian. And now let us see which of us is the better." The back rooms in the bar were available for rent for just this sort of occasion. As the Xenexian strode into the room, pivoting quickly on his heel to make sure that the Orion girl wasn't behind his back, the sturdy bed in the corner wasn't really much more than the room required. Zinna slinked across the floor, her hips swaying. "I guess Crassus learned who was the better. And what shall I call you?" "Mac." She sprung towards him and wrapped herself around him, her legs straddling his hips. And then her lips were against his hungrily. He staggered back towards the bed, hit the mattress, and fell back on it. He pulled her up to face him, looked into her eyes, and felt as if he were being sucked into a maelstrom. Her hands reached below his waist as his own arms extended up towards the pillow that lay at the far end of the bed. The door to the room opened in complete silence. Mac did not see Crassus enter, carrying a large knife, but Zinna spotted him and hissed loudly to cover his entrance. Crassus took 2 quick, silent steps and was across the room, the knife brought up over his head as he prepared to bring it slamming down. The Xenexian was oblivious, his back glistening with sweat, his right hand under the pillow. Yeah! And suddenly there was a shriek of energy which tore through the pillow, blasting it apart, slicing through Crassus. Max suddenly arched his back and shoved Zinna out from under him. She hit the floor, stunned and confused. She looked at the fallen Crassus in shock, and then back at the Xenexian. You shot him, and you You didn't even see him. Mac walked slowly over towards Crassus, who was lying on the floor clutching his belly. He crouched down. Gut shot, Crassus. Takes a while to die of those. Painful as hell. Bastard. Mac nodded slowly. Yes, I imagine so. But even bastards have friends, including one who saved my life once. His name was Barsamis. Then some Orion slave trader violated an agreement and wound up killing him. Shoved a knife between his ribs. Was this the knife? Wordlessly, Crassus nodded. Well then, I'd say this falls into the realm of poetic justice. Wouldn't you? Suddenly the warning tingled in the base of Mac's skull. Zinna leaped at him, and Mac, still from a crouched position, slammed out his right foot. It caught Zinna squarely in the gut while she was still in midair and sent her falling to the floor. Mac scrambled to his feet as Zinna backed against the far wall. I don't want to have to kill you, but I will. Zinna, with a bestial roar, leapt at him. In a split second before he could squeeze the trigger, Mac sensed someone else behind him. The stun blast struck Zinna and flipped her backwards over the bed. She hit the floor and lay there, unmoving. Mac spun, his blaster still leveled. I'll be damned, Picard, what are you doing here? Later, as the shuttlecraft hurtled away from Mojav's station, Picard turned from the controls to study Calhoun's face and asked after a time,
You had to kill that Orion, didn't you?
Calhoun looked up. Yes, it was self-defense.
That's how you arranged it.
Picard, that Orion killed a man to whom I owed my life. Honor demanded that the score be evened, but I'm not an assassin. I couldn't just walk in and kill him.
You're splitting hairs, Mackenzie.
Calhoun gave a lopsided grin. Gods, Mackenzie. It's been ages since I went by that. By this point, I prefer Mac. Mac to my friends. Do you fall into that category, Picard?
I would like to think so, but you're trying to drag me off the topic. Did it bring you personal satisfaction, killing that Orion?
Yes, Picard. Yes, it did. I'm a savage. He ran a finger down the scar on his face. I've kept this to remind me. Remember, Picard, when you told me you thought I was destined for greatness? I believed you. I had a vision of you. I believed you would be important in my life. Calhoun got up and strode toward the back of the shuttlecraft. Picard followed him.
Mac, you should have never resigned. I know you blame yourself for what happened on the Grissom, but Starfleet cleared you.
Don't bring it up.
Damn it, Calhoun, you're a Starfleet officer. You have a destiny.
Calhoun walked across the shuttlecraft and dropped back into the helm chair. Picard, I could see the future so clearly, even when I was a young man. I couldn't help but believe I was destined to bring my people to freedom. And then I saw you guiding me. Oh, I had setbacks, but in the end I always triumphed, until the Grissom disaster.
You're a Starfleet officer. No matter what you are now, that is what you will always be. You cannot turn away from that.
The words struck a chord. He had heard them before, 20 years ago, in the pit. In spite of himself, Calhoun smiled. Perhaps it is destiny after all. And it sure would annoy old Jellicoe, wouldn't it? So tell me about this ship you want to put me on. The light was blinking on Selita's computer when she entered her apartment. Outside, a storm front was moving in, clearly visible in the distance over Starfleet Academy. Computer, messages.
2 messages. Playing first message.
The screen flickered to life and Commander Seth Goddard from Starfleet Central appeared.
Lieutenant, this message has a callback command built in. Wait for live transmission, please.
In a moment, Goddard's live image appeared. He was all business.
You're being reactivated, Lieutenant. You're shipping out next week on the Excalibur.
Sir, I am not seeking a shipboard position. My place is here on Earth at the Academy.
It's called Starfleet, Lieutenant, not Earthfleet. You're needed on the Excalibur as science officer. You came highly recommended by Ambassador Spock.
Despite her hesitation, she was annoyed to find a tingle of anticipation. The Excalibur was a starship with a long and illustrious history. But, sir, why me?
The Excalibur is going to Sector 221-G.
Selita nodded. Thallonian space. There have been stories of refugees, civil war.
And we're sending the Excalibur into the heart of it. It's going to be a hell of an adventure.
Very well, sir. I'll be ready. Goddard's image vanished to be replaced by a blank computer screen.
Second message. Visual only.
2 words formed on the screen. Don't move. Selita wondered aloud, what kind of message is that? Then she felt the blunt end of some sort of blaster weapon lodge itself securely in her neck. Whoever was behind her had either entered the apartment while she was speaking to Goddard, or had been present the entire time. The voice was soft but threatening.
It is the kind of message you should pay attention to. Now you shall do exactly what I say. And may God help you if you do not, because no one else will be able to help you. That I can assure you.